The observation deck of the merchant vessel Celestial Drift hummed with its usual evening quietness. Captain Thomas Brennan stood at the viewing port, watching the endless sweep of stars blur past as the ship maintained its steady course through the frontier sectors. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he barely noticed. 20 years of hauling cargo between human colonies and alien trade stations had taught him to appreciate these peaceful moments. They never lasted long. The proximity alarm shattered the silence with a harsh blare that made Thomas nearly drop his cup. Red warning lights flooded the deck as his second officer sprinted toward the control panels. "Captain, we've got an unidentified vessel on collision course," Lieutenant Rebecca Hayes called out, her fingers flying across the navigation console. "It's not responding to hails and moving erratically." Thomas set down his coffee and moved to her station, his eyes scanning the readouts. The vessel was small, definitely not human design. Its energy signature was failing, systems flickering on and off like a dying heartbeat. Distance? 40,000 kilometers and closing fast. "Sir, their trajectory is unstable. I think they're about to lose engine power completely." Thomas made a decision that would change everything. "Prepare a tractor beam. We're bringing them in." Rebecca turned to stare at him. "Captain, we don't know what's on that ship. Could be hostile, could be carrying dangerous cargo. Could be someone who needs help," Thomas replied quietly. "Ready that beam." The merchant vessel Celestial Drift might have been designed for hauling construction materials and trade goods, but it carried standard rescue equipment. The tractor beam locked onto the failing ship with practiced precision, pulling it slowly into their cargo bay. Through the viewing screens, Thomas watched the vessel up close for the first time. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The hull gleamed with scales that seemed to shift between deep crimson and burnished gold, almost organic in appearance. Wing-like extensions jutted from the sides, though they served no obvious aerodynamic purpose in space. The entire craft looked less like a machine and more like a sleeping creature. "Captain," Rebecca's voice carried a note of wonder mixed with concern. "That's a Draconid vessel. I've never seen one this far into human space." Thomas had heard of the Draconids, though he'd never encountered one personally. An ancient species that claimed descent from creatures of legend, they rarely ventured beyond their own territories in the galactic core. Their technology merged biological and mechanical elements in ways that still baffled human engineers. The cargo bay pressurized with a hiss. Thomas grabbed his sidearm out of habit, though he hoped he wouldn't need it. Rebecca and two security officers joined him as they made their way down to the bay. The strange vessel sat in the center of the cavernous space, its scaled hull reflecting their flashlight beams in unsettling ways. "Life signs?" Thomas asked. Rebecca checked her scanner. 2. Both weak. One adult Draconid and one juvenile based on the bio readings. "Captain, the juvenile's life signs are critical." Thomas approached the vessel's entry port. It had cracked open during the emergency landing, revealing a dark interior lit only by failing emergency lights. He climbed inside carefully, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. The interior took his breath away. Every surface was covered in those same organic scales, warm to the touch. Crystalline displays flickered weakly, showing readings in a language he couldn't decipher. And there, collapsed across the pilot's seat, was a Draconid. She was magnificent even in distress. Her scales were the deep blue of Earth's oceans, edged with silver that caught the light. Two elegant horns curved back from her head, and wings that seemed too delicate for space travel were folded tightly against her back. Her face was a striking blend of reptilian and humanoid features, with high cheekbones and large eyes that were currently closed. But what made Thomas move faster was the small bundle she clutched against her chest. A child, no more than 5 or 6 in human years, with scales of lighter blue touched with gold. The little one's breathing was shallow and rapid. "Help me get them out," Thomas said urgently. The Draconid mother stirred as they tried to lift the child. Her eyes snapped open, revealing brilliant amber irises that focused on Thomas with startling intensity. Her hand shot out faster than he could react, gripping his wrist with strength that made his bones ache. "Please," she whispered in heavily accented standard. "My daughter. Save my daughter." "We're going to help both of you," Thomas assured her, though her grip made him wince. "But you need to let us move her to medical." The mother's eyes searched his face for a long moment. Thomas met her gaze steadily, letting her see whatever she needed to see. Finally, her grip loosened. "You are human," she said, as if recognizing something significant. "They say humans keep their promises, even to strangers." "We try our best," Thomas replied softly. "What's your name?" "Serafina of the Crimson Peak clan." Her voice was growing weaker. "My daughter is Ember. She is only 4 cycles old. The radiation from our damaged core has poisoned her. If she does not receive treatment soon, her fire will go out forever." Thomas felt Rebecca tense beside him. Draconid physiology was poorly understood by human medicine. They literally produced internal heat that powered their biological functions, a trait that gave rise to ancient Earth legends about their kind. If that internal fire failed, especially in a child, it would be fatal. "Our medical bay is limited," Rebecca said quietly. "Captain, we're 3 days from the nearest station with xenobiological facilities." Thomas looked at the little girl in her mother's arms. Ember's scales had lost their luster, turning dull and gray. Her breathing was labored, each inhale a visible struggle. He thought of his own daughter back on Earth, grown now with children of her own, but he remembered every moment of her childhood with crystal clarity. "Then we figure it out ourselves," he said firmly. "Get them both to medical. Now." They carried mother and daughter through the corridors of the Celestial Drift. Other crew members stopped to stare at the unexpected passengers, but Thomas's expression kept any questions silent. In the medical bay, they carefully laid Serafina and Ember on the examination tables. The ship's medical officer, Dr. Patricia Wong, was already reviewing what little information the computer had on Draconid physiology. She looked up as they entered, her expression shifting from curiosity to professional concern. "I've never treated a Draconid," she admitted. "My knowledge is purely theoretical." Serafina struggled to sit up, her face etched with desperation. The radiation damaged her internal furnace. She needs heat, constant regulated heat to restart her metabolism. Among my people, family would share their fire with her, but I am too weak. My own fire is dying. Dr. Wong frowned, checking readings on her medical scanner. Her core body temperature is dropping steadily. If it falls below a critical threshold, her cellular functions will begin shutting down. We need to raise and maintain her temperature, but standard heating methods could damage her scales or cause burns. Thomas watched the little girl on the table. Ember's eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused and confused. She made a small sound, barely a whimper, before her mother took her hand. "There must be something we can do," Thomas said. Serafina's amber eyes fixed on him again with that same measuring intensity. "There is one way, but it requires trust between species that rarely coexist. Your human body temperature is lower than ours, but stable and constant. If you were to hold her, skin to skin, sharing your warmth for an extended period, it might sustain her long enough for her furnace to restart. Like treating hypothermia in human infants," Dr. Wong said slowly. "Kangaroo care. Using body heat for temperature regulation." "How long would I need to hold her?" Thomas asked. "Days, perhaps," Serafina said. "Someone must maintain constant contact, sharing warmth without interruption. It is an enormous responsibility." Thomas looked at the dying child and made his second life-changing decision of the day. "Tell me what I need to do." The medical bay of the Celestial Drift had been transformed into something between a hospital room and a nest. Serafina had been stabilized with basic medical care and rest, though she remained weak. Her damaged vessel had been secured in the cargo bay, its failing core isolated to prevent further radiation leaks. But the focus of everyone's attention was the small area where Captain Thomas Brennan sat in a specially modified chair, holding a tiny dragon child against his chest. Ember weighed almost nothing despite her scales. Dr. Wong had shown Thomas how to position her properly, with the child's chest pressed against his own so their heartbeats aligned. They had removed his shirt and wrapped them both in thermal blankets that maintained heat without adding weight. Ember's scales felt smooth and cool against his skin, like river stones that had been sitting in shade. Her temperature is stabilizing, Dr. Wong reported, checking her scanner for the 20th time that hour. Not rising yet, but at least it stopped falling. Thomas barely heard her. He was focused on the small life in his arms, watching the shallow rise and fall of Ember's breathing. Her face was pressed into the hollow of his throat, her tiny hands curled loosely against his collarbone. She hadn't opened her eyes in hours. Serafina lay on the adjacent bed, watching them with an expression Thomas couldn't quite read. Gratitude, certainly, but also something deeper. Fear, perhaps, or wonder. "Among my people, this is sacred," she said softly. "To share warmth with another's child is to pledge yourself as guardian. You risk your own life force to sustain hers." "I'm just keeping her warm," Thomas replied, though he adjusted his hold on Ember unconsciously, protective. "It is more than that." Serafina's amber eyes gleamed in the medical bay's soft lighting. "Your species fascinates me, Thomas Brennan. You barely know us, have no obligation to us, yet you sacrifice your comfort and safety for a child not your own. It's what anyone would do." "No." The word came out firmly. "It is what humans do. We have heard stories about your kind in the core worlds. How you throw yourselves into danger for strangers. How you adopt orphans of other species. How you weep for losses that are not your own." She paused. "We thought they were exaggerations." Rebecca entered the medical bay carrying a meal tray. She'd volunteered to handle the captain's duties while he remained with Ember, though Thomas could see the stress of command weighing on her. She set the tray on a nearby table within his reach. "Status report?" Thomas asked. "We're maintaining course for the nearest xenobiological facility at Outpost Meridian. Still 3 days out at maximum safe speed." Rebecca glanced at Ember. "How is she?" "Holding steady," Dr. Wong answered. "But we're not out of danger yet. Her internal temperature needs to rise before her metabolism can restart properly. Right now, the captain's body heat is just preventing further decline." "What happens if it doesn't rise?" Rebecca asked the question they'd all been thinking. Serafina answered before the doctor could. "Her fire will go out completely. She will sleep forever, like embers that have gone cold and cannot be rekindled." The medical bay fell silent except for the soft beeping of monitors. Thomas felt Ember stir slightly against him, a small movement that sent a spike of hope through his chest. Her scales seemed fractionally warmer. "Talk to her," Serafina suggested. "In my culture, we believe that voices can carry warmth when bodies cannot. Tell her stories. Let her hear life in your words." Thomas felt awkward at first, but looking down at the small dragon child in his arms, he found himself speaking. He told her about Earth, about the ocean waves he'd grown up watching in California. He described the feeling of sand between toes and the taste of salt air. He talked about his own daughter's childhood, the scraped knees and bedtime stories and endless questions about the stars. "I always wanted to see the stars," he murmured. "Even as a boy, I would lie on my back in the yard and imagine what was out here. Never thought I'd be holding a dragon, though. That seemed like something from fairy tales." Ember's breathing changed slightly, becoming deeper and more regular. One of her small hands flexed against his chest. "She hears you," Serafina said with wonder in her voice. "Look," her scales brightened just a bit. It was true. The dull gray that had overtaken Ember's natural blue was beginning to show hints of color again, like dawn touching a clouded sky. The hours blended together. Thomas dozed occasionally, always careful to maintain his hold on Ember. Crew members rotated through to check on them, bringing food and water, offering quiet encouragement. Dr. Wong monitored vital signs constantly, her initial skepticism transforming into cautious optimism. On the second day, Ember opened her eyes for the first time. They were the same brilliant amber as her mother's, but with flecks of gold that caught the light. She stared up at Thomas with an expression of confused wonder, as if trying to understand what this strange warm creature was that held her so carefully. "Hello there," Thomas whispered, smiling. "Welcome back, little one." Ember made a sound, somewhere between a chirp and a purr. Her small hand reached up and touched Thomas's face, exploring the unfamiliar texture of human skin with delicate curiosity. Her scales were definitely warmer now, almost matching his own body temperature. "Mama?" Ember's voice was tiny and uncertain. "I am here, my flame," Serafina called from her bed. "This human is helping you. His name is Thomas." "Thomas," Ember repeated carefully, the syllables strange in her mouth. She pressed her face back against his chest, seeming to find comfort in the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Dr. Wong was grinning as she checked her readings. "Captain, her core temperature is rising. Slowly, but steadily. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Over the next day, Ember became more alert. She would watch Thomas with those intense amber eyes, occasionally making small sounds that Serafina translated as questions or observations. She seemed fascinated by his face, particularly his eyes and the way he smiled at her. "She has never seen a human before," Serafina explained. "To her, you are as mythical as we are to your people." "What do I look like to her?" Thomas asked. Serafina considered the question. "Soft. Strange. Safe." She paused. "She calls you the warm keeper in her mind. The one who holds the fire when hers went dark." Thomas felt something tighten in his chest. This little creature had claimed a piece of his heart without asking permission. He found himself humming old Earth songs to her, the same ones he'd sung to his own daughter decades ago. Ember would make contented sounds and press closer, soaking up both warmth and affection. On the third day, as they approached Outpost Meridian, Dr. Wong made an announcement that filled the medical bay with relief. "Her internal furnace has restarted. Temperature is normalizing, metabolism is functioning properly. She's going to be fine." Serafina made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. She had recovered enough strength to sit up fully, though she remained weak. "You saved her. You kept your promise, Thomas Brennan." "Our deal was to help both of you," Thomas reminded her. "You're not fully recovered yet. I will heal now that I know my daughter lives." Serafina's expression grew serious. "But I need you to understand what you have done. By saving Ember's life through such intimate means, you have created a bond in our culture. She will remember you always as her guardian. And I am in your debt beyond measure." Thomas looked down at Ember, who was now awake and watching the activity around them with bright, curious eyes. She seemed to sense the change, that the crisis had passed. But when Dr. Wong suggested it might be time to separate them, Ember made a distressed sound and clung tighter to Thomas. "She does not want to leave you," Serafina observed. "You are her safety now." "I need to give her back eventually," Thomas said, though he found himself reluctant. "You're her mother." "Yes, but you are something else to her now. Something precious." Serafina tilted her head in that distinctly reptilian gesture. "We will need to discuss what comes next." Outpost Meridian gleamed against the black backdrop of space like a mechanical star. The station served as a waypoint between human and alien territories, a place where dozens of species mingled for trade and diplomacy. As the celestial drift docked, Thomas carried Ember wrapped in a thermal blanket, unwilling to let her go even now that the immediate danger had passed. The Xenobiological Medical Center occupied an entire section of the station. Dr. Helena Vasquez, a specialist in cross-species medicine, met them at the entrance. She was a short woman with kind eyes and quick hands, already reaching for her scanner before they'd finished introductions. "Captain Brennan, I received the medical files Dr. Wong transmitted. What you've accomplished is remarkable. Most humans wouldn't survive 3 days of constant physical contact with a draconid child. Their scales can conduct heat so efficiently that it usually drains human body temperature too rapidly." Thomas glanced down at Ember, who had her face pressed against his shoulder. "She needed the help more than I needed comfort." Dr. Vasquez examined both Serafina and Ember thoroughly. The medical wing had equipment specifically designed for non-human physiology, machines that hummed and glowed with soft light as they scanned. Throughout the examination, Ember refused to leave Thomas's arms. Whenever a medical staff member tried to take her, she would cling to him and make distressed sounds. "The bond is strong," Dr. Vasquez observed. "I've read about this in draconid psychology texts, but never witnessed it. She's imprinted on you as a guardian figure." "What does that mean exactly?" Thomas asked. Serafina answered from the examination table where she was receiving treatment for radiation exposure. "It means Ember considers you essential to her safety. Young draconids form powerful attachments to those who save them during critical moments. She will carry this bond for the rest of her life. But she has you. Her actual mother." "Yes, and she loves me as a child should." Serafina's amber eyes met his. "But she will also seek you out, remember you, need to know you are well. It is not a small thing among my people." The medical staff worked efficiently. Serafina's radiation poisoning was treatable, though full recovery would take weeks. Ember's internal furnace was functioning normally now, her scales bright with healthy color. Physically, both were going to survive. But as Dr. Vasquez completed her reports, she pulled Thomas aside. "Captain, I need to explain something about draconid development. Ember is at a crucial age. The next few years will shape her understanding of trust, safety, and relationships. Having her guardian bond disrupted now, especially after such a traumatic experience, could cause lasting psychological damage." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just giving you information so you can make informed decisions." Dr. Vasquez glanced at where Ember sat on a medical bed, watching Thomas even from across the room. "Draconids value family bonds above almost everything. To them, you've become family." The weight of those words settled over Thomas like a physical thing. He'd made split-second decisions in his career before, but they usually involved cargo routes and shipping schedules. This was a life. 2 lives, actually. Serafina approached them, moving slowly but with growing strength. "I need to return to my clan's territory soon. Ember needs stability, familiar surroundings, others of her kind as she grows. But I cannot take her from you without causing her pain." "I can't leave my ship," Thomas said. "My crew, my routes. This is my life." "I know." Serafina's expression was complex. "Among humans, what would you call someone who helped raise a child that was not their own? Who was there for important moments even if not every day? An uncle, maybe. Or a godparent." Thomas felt his heart starting to race. "Are you asking what I think you're asking? I am asking if you would be willing to remain in Ember's life. Not as her primary guardian, but as someone she can turn to. Someone who visits, who sends messages, who she knows cares for her well-being." Serafina's voice grew softer. "I am asking if you would be willing to be family, in the way humans and draconids both understand that word." Thomas looked at Ember. The little dragon girl was swinging her legs on the medical bed, investigating a medical scanner with intense curiosity. As if sensing his gaze, she looked up and gave him a smile that showed tiny pointed teeth. She waved at him with one small hand. "I'm just a cargo hauler," Thomas said quietly. "I transport goods between stations. Nothing special. You are the person who held my daughter when she was dying and refused to let her go." Serafina placed a scaled hand on his shoulder. "You are the one who sang her songs and shared your warmth when she had nothing. That makes you very special indeed." Rebecca had been standing nearby, listening. She stepped forward now. "Captain, if I may speak freely. The celestial drift can adjust its routes. We service this sector regularly. Visits to the core territories aren't impossible, just uncommon. If you wanted to maintain contact with Serafina and Ember, we could make it work." Thomas felt overwhelmed by the enormity of what they were discussing. He'd lived a relatively simple life. No grand adventures, no legendary achievements. Just steady work and quiet satisfaction. Now he was being asked to become part of something larger, to bridge the gap between species through one small dragon child who had decided he was worth trusting. He walked over to Ember. She immediately reached for him, and he scooped her up. She was heavier now, stronger, her internal fire burning bright and warm. She nuzzled against his neck in that way she developed over their 3 days together. "Thomas warm," she said clearly, one of the few words she'd learned. "Safe." "Yeah, kid," Thomas replied, his voice rough with emotion. "You're safe." He looked up at Serafina, at Dr. Vasquez, at Rebecca and the medical staff watching this strange interspecies moment. He thought about the stories he'd told Ember about Earth and family and promises kept. He thought about his own daughter, grown and happy, who had always said he had too much love to give for one lifetime. "All right," Thomas said. "I'm in. I don't know how this works exactly, but we'll figure it out together." Serafina's face transformed with relief and joy. "You honor us beyond measure, Thomas Brennan. I swear to you, on my clan's fire, that Ember will know you always. You will have a place in our home, in our hearts, in our future." Over the next few days, they worked out the details. Serafina would return to the Crimson Peak clan's territory with Ember once she was fully recovered. The Celestial Drift would adjust its trade routes to include regular stops at Outpost Meridian, which was relatively close to Draconid space. They would visit several times a year, more when possible. Messages could be exchanged through the station's communication network. It wasn't a traditional arrangement by any species standards, but then again, there was nothing traditional about any of this. On the day Serafina and Ember were cleared to leave, Thomas walked them to their repaired vessel. Ember had grown noticeably stronger, her scales gleaming with health and vitality. But she kept looking back at Thomas, her amber eyes worried. "You will come visit?" she asked in her small voice. "Promise?" Thomas knelt down to her level. "I promise. I'll come see you, and you can tell me all about your home and your family. Deal?" Ember thought about this seriously, then nodded. She threw her small arms around his neck and hugged him fiercely. "Thomas is family now," she declared. "Mama said so." "That's right," Serafina confirmed. She placed a hand on Thomas's shoulder in formal gesture. "You are clan friend now. Guardian to my daughter. What we call a keeper of promises. It is a title of great respect among our people." As Thomas watched their vessel depart from the cargo bay, heading toward Draconid space and a life he could barely imagine, he felt Rebecca come to stand beside him. "That was quite an adventure, Captain," she said. "Yeah." Thomas watched the vessel's engines flare bright against the stars. "I think it's just beginning, though." 3 months later, the Celestial Drift completed a cargo run to Outpost Meridian. Thomas barely waited for the docking procedures to finish before he was heading to the communication center. The message was waiting for him, transmitted from the heart of Draconid space. It was a video file. When it played, Ember's face filled the screen, older looking already, growing so fast. She was grinning that sharp-toothed grin he remembered. Thomas. I learned to fly today. Mama says next time you visit, I can show you. I am learning human words too. See? I am getting better. She held up a datapad covered in childish drawings. I draw a picture of you. You are the one with the warm heart. That is what clan grandmother calls you. She wants to meet you next time. The message continued with Ember's excited chatter about her home, her clan, her lessons. Serafina appeared briefly to add her own greetings and confirm the next visit schedule. As the message ended, Thomas found himself smiling. He pulled out his own communication device and started recording a response. He had stories to tell about Earth's oceans and family traditions. He had promises to keep. And in the vast darkness of space, across thousands of light years, a small dragon girl would receive his message and know that the warm keeper remembered her, that he kept his word, that family meant something real and lasting. Some promises, Thomas had learned, were worth crossing the stars to keep.